What if I told you the most important battle of World War II was won by accident? You've been told the German Panzer was invincible, a rolling fortress of steel that dominated the battlefields of World War II. American soldiers, armed with nothing but machine guns, could only watch in terror as these metal beasts advanced. But what if I told you that wasn't true? What if a simple .50 caliber machine gun, a weapon designed to take down aircraft, could punch through the armor of Germany's finest tanks? And what if German crews discovered this fact, not in a testing ground, but in the killing fields of France, Belgium, and Germany itself? This is the story of a fatal miscalculation, a design flaw written in blood, and the slow, horrifying realization that changed tank warfare forever. Welcome to The Last Stand. Let's go back to 1944. The beaches of Normandy are still wet with blood. Allied forces are pushing inland, and the German Wehrmacht is throwing everything they have to stop them. Imagine you're a German tank commander. You're sitting inside a Panzer IV or a Panther tank. Machines that cost hundreds of thousands of Reichsmarks to produce. Crewed by 5 men, each one trained for months. You've been told your armor can withstand anti-tank rifles. Artillery, sure, that's dangerous. Tank-on-tank combat, deadly. But a machine gun, laughable. The American M2 Browning .50 caliber machine gun was everywhere. Mounted on jeeps, half-tracks, tank destroyers, even in fixed positions. It fired a half-inch diameter bullet at nearly 3,000 feet per second. It was designed in 1921 to shoot down airplanes and punch through engine blocks. But tanks? No, that wasn't supposed to be possible. German tank designers knew this. They'd studied the ballistics. They understood metallurgy. The base armor on most German tanks ranged from 30 millimeters to 80 millimeters on the front hull and turret, far thicker than anything a machine gun could threaten. Or so they thought. Because what German engineers didn't account for was the side armor. The thinner plates welded onto the flanks and rear of their tanks, plates that were sometimes as thin as 14 to 20 millimeters, plates chosen not for maximum protection, but for weight savings, fuel efficiency, and cost. You see, the doctrine was simple. Tanks fight from the front. Infantry protects the flanks. Air superiority keeps ground attack aircraft away. It was a perfect system, until it wasn't. The first reports came in during the summer of 1944. Normandy, the bocage. Those dense, nightmarish hedgerows where visibility was measured in meters, not kilometers. American infantry, pinned down by a Panzer IV, called in a nearby M16 half-track, a vehicle mounting .50 caliber machine guns in a quad mount. The crew opened fire on the tank's side armor. The rounds penetrated. Imagine being inside that tank. The sound alone would be deafening, a metallic screaming as bullets slam into your hull at supersonic speed. Then, one punches through, then another. Fragments of steel ricochet inside the crew compartment, hydraulic fluid sprays. Someone screams, and you realize you are not safe. But here's where it gets darker. German high command knew this was theoretically possible. Internal ballistics reports from as early as 1942 showed that .50 caliber armor-piercing incendiary rounds could, under the right conditions, penetrate thin side armor at close range, especially at perpendicular angles. But the reports were buried. Why? Because acknowledging the flaw would mean redesigning entire production lines. It would mean admitting that hundreds of tanks already in the field were vulnerable. It would mean diverting resources, steel, labor, time, that Germany simply didn't have in 1943 and 44. So the flaw remained, and tank crews paid the price. By late 1944, American tactics had evolved. Tank destroyers and infantry learned to bait German tanks into ambushes. They'd use terrain, buildings, anything to get a flanking shot. Then, .50 calories would light them up. The Panzer crews started calling it Maschinengewehr Tod, machine gun death. Because once the bullets started coming through, you had seconds to decide, stay and fight, hoping your frontal armor holds, or bail out and risk being cut down in the open. But the most horrifying part? The delay in institutional learning. Even as field reports piled up, even as crews begged for additional side armor or spaced plating, the changes came too slowly. Some units jury-rigged their own solutions, welding spare track links onto the hull sides, hanging sandbags, anything for a few extra millimeters of protection. But official upgrades? Those took months. And by then, thousands of tank crews had already learned the hard way learned by dying. You see, this wasn't just a design flaw, it was a symptom of a larger power word, arrogance. German military doctrine in the early war years was built on the assumption of offensive dominance, blitzkrieg, lightning war. Tanks were meant to charge forward, smash through enemy lines, and never look back. But by 1944, Germany was on the defensive. Tanks were being used to hold ground, to fight from static positions, to retreat under fire. Suddenly, those thin side plates, those cost-saving measures, became death traps, and the Americans? They noticed. Reports from the U.S. Ordnance Department in late 1944 specifically recommended increased use of .50 caliber fire against German armor at close range. It became part of the training manual. The hunters had become the hunted. So why does this matter? Because this story isn't just about tanks and bullets. It's about the power word cost of ignoring inconvenient truths. The German military-industrial complex knew their tanks had a vulnerability, but admitting it, fixing it, would have required a level of honesty and resource allocation they couldn't afford. So they gambled. They gambled that the enemy wouldn't figure it out, that their crews could compensate, that the war would be over before it became a widespread problem. They lost that bet. And the price was paid in the blood of young men sitting in steel coffins, realizing far too late that the armor around them was little more than an illusion. This flaw didn't lose Germany the war, but it's a reminder. In war, there are no small mistakes, only fatal ones. The .50 caliber machine gun, a weapon never intended to fight tanks, became a tank killer because someone, somewhere, decided that a few millimeters of armor weren't worth the cost. And by the time the truth came out, it was already too late. If you want more forgotten stories from the darkest corners of history, subscribe to The Last Stand. Because the past is never as simple as they taught you.